Would you rather drop 60 points on prime Kobe Bryant's head or run 60 red lights in 4 months without getting caught? Well, this guy did both. A basketball player and human being that went through the highest ups and the lowest lows. I mean, his career had it all. But is the legacy that he left behind a reflection of the real Mr. Agent Zero? Let's clear this mystery up once and for all and relive the legacy of Gilbert Arenas. 0. That's Gilbert Arenas' jersey number. It's also the number of minutes that scouts told him he was going to play in the NCAA. And then in the NBA, a classic underdog story. And through sheer grit and grind, though, he would prove himself and earn a starting spot in Arizona University's basketball team. There, he would prove the world wrong by averaging 16 points per game over the season and carrying his team to the NCAA final. Happy ending, right? You'd think with a season like this, every single scout in the NBA would want him in the league, correct? Well, I mean, he did get drafted into the league the following season, but can you guess which draft pick was used on him? Top 5, maybe top 10? He wouldn't go as low as 20th, right? Wrong. Gilbert Arenas fell to the 2nd round. And given only 15 players in the history of the league have been picked for the All-Star game after being a 2nd rounder, you can see why his career didn't quite look like it was going to go to the moon from the start. But having secured a spot in the league, he knew that he could finally start his work. And while he did take a few weeks to get into the Warriors rotation, he impressed the coaching staff so much that he would even end up starting 30 games in just his rookie season. And he should have been pretty content with that. I mean, after all, just retaining an NBA spot is considered a success for a 2nd rounder in this league. But Gilbert, with his giant ego, knew he was destined for something bigger. And something bigger he did. Averaging 18 points and 6 assists per game, and most importantly, winning the Most Improved Player award. Now, you might think these stats are not that impressive, but you got to remember that we're in 2002, okay? Right in the middle of the dead ball era. You know, that time where you were lucky if your team scored more than like 80 points per night, and when having your hands all over your opponent's body was considered legal defense? Coming back to our star in the making though, him winning the MIP seemed to have turned a switch in the heads of the NBA teams and public. Because from that point on, Gil was no longer that little 2nd rounder that was just trying to show some promise. No. He was one of the most sought-after commodities in the NBA market. And in a totally unprecedented fashion for an underdog like this, Gil had gotten too good too quickly. So much so, actually, that he totally destroyed the CBA rulebook, forcing the NBA to change their rules. Yes, you're not dreaming. The NBA created a Gilbert Arenas rule for a guy that was just in his 2nd year. Let me explain, okay? So in the offseason, following his MIP award, Gil became an unrestricted free agent. Now, you would expect the Warriors to pick him up again, right? Well, let's just say the Wizards made things a little complicated and came in with a 6-year, $60 million contract. The problem being, the Wizards offered more than what the Warriors' salary cap could take. And with him not being a 1st-round pick, the Warriors just couldn't match the offer and had to see Gil go to the Wizards without being able to do anything against it. In retrospect, though, moving to the Wizards was the best thing that could have happened to his career. After all, the franchise just gave him the keys to the team and let him do anything he wanted. And he did not disappoint. From 2004 to 2007, Agent Zero would average a crazy 28 points per game, along with 6 assists and 2 steals. Obviously, during that 3-year span, he was a 3-time All-Star and a 3-time All-NBA player. I mean, he proved to the world that he was not only worthy of an NBA spot, but also he was like one of the best basketball players in the world. Oh, and that Agent Zero nickname, yeah, he earned it. He was the guy that you gave the ball to when the clock was winding down and needed one clutch shot to save the game. He has more iconic buzzer beaters than anyone I know. Just look how he crucified Utah with his unstoppable 3-point shot. Oh, and his killer mentality? Yeah, that was legit too. Just think back to what it must have been like playing against Kobe in the 2000s. What did that mean? Well, it meant you praying that it was over quickly and that you didn't end up on a highlight compilation of Kobe destroying you. You know what it meant for Gilbert Arenas? It meant he was going to have a routine 30-point game, or if he was really feeling it, 60. Yeah, that's right. Gil is the guy that dropped the most points in a game ever on Kobe's head. Not only that, just 5 days later, he would become the guy that dropped the most points against the Phoenix Suns in the last 50 years, with a 54-point bomb right on Steve Nash's head. And his success was not only on the court either. He was slowly becoming one of the most appreciated figureheads in the NBA world. He was not only a flashy player that had a really remarkable play style, he was a charismatic guy that knew how to rattle media attention too. He also liked a good prank now and then. Harmless fun, like the time he turned the bathtub of his teammate Andre Blatch into a giant latte. Gil just knew how to get everyone's attention. This would obviously also attract a number of endorsements, like his iconic Adidas shoes that everyone wanted to have when they were younger. His influence on the game and the culture is also kind of underlooked in today's basketball scene. Just watch one of Gilbert's games and you'll quickly notice that the guy is moving like a 2023 NBA guard, despite playing in the mid-2000s. Oh, and don't you think he forgot his community when he made his money either. Remember that 06-07 season when he showered every team in the league with like 50-point bombs? What if I told you that Gil donated $100 to DC area schools for every single point that he scored that season at home? He finished the season with more than 1,000 points at home, by the way. I'll let you do the math. Now, as with many great athletes, injuries began to take their toll on Gilbert Arenas. Nagging health problems hindered his ability to perform at his best. It was a heartbreaking phase in his career as fans watched their beloved Agent Zero struggle with physical limitations. The major one was obviously his MCL tear in 2007 when Gerald Wallace fell on his leg and absolutely destroyed his knee. And this would not only be a season-ending injury, by the way, it also majorly derailed the rest of his career. From 2007 to 2010, Gil would play less than 50 games, with a series of knee and leg injuries that just kept piling up. And while he would eventually heal from his injuries over the long term, this would greatly impact his athleticism, and the once powerful and explosive player would become nothing but a shell of his former self. And what you need to understand is that Gil's problems, issues, whatever you want to call them, started even before his injuries. The thing is, Agent Zero never had any limits. And while this was a good thing when it came to going above and beyond the expectations that everyone set before him coming into the league, he really didn't know how to pump the brakes, at all. He got lucky in the beginning, getting away with quite a lot. Remember that bathtub latte prank I mentioned earlier? Well, that was easily the most safe for work one that we could have mentioned. Because from taking a dump in a teammate's shoes to spraying them with a water hose while they were in the toilet, Gil really didn't have any limit on that front. And it started to not be as playful anymore, At that point, he was just straight up malicious. Which brings me to that moment everybody's been waiting for, because you cannot talk about Gilbert Arenas without talking about his infamous locker room standoff with Javaris Crittenton. This is the event that really showed the extent of not only his lack of maturity, but also just straight up stupidity. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. NBA players, pro athletes in general, they get away with a lot in life. But there are a few things that you just can't do. One of those things is threatening a teammate, especially if you do it with a firearm, unregistered, right in the middle of the team's locker room. That's right. Gilbert Arenas took his Agent Zero nickname a bit too seriously, and I guess figured that finger guns as a celebration wasn't just going to cut it. No, he needed the real thing. And since he also needed all the street cred that he could get to continue being able to do his pranks without any repercussions, I guess, he decided to just bring an actual gun into an NBA-owned facility. Yeah, he and his teammate Javaris Crittenton pulled out guns on each other following a gambling disagreement. Yep, 2 guns in the locker room. It wasn't actually reported that way at first, it was just Gilbert, but this prompted an investigation from the team, the NBA, the police, and even the U.S. Attorney's Office. Now, obviously, the investigation was conclusive, and Gilbert was not only suspended for the latter half of the 2010 season, but also convicted of his crimes and sentenced to 2 years probation and 30 days in a halfway house. Quite a fall from grace for the former All-Star. Crittenton was never really heard from again either. Maybe that's a story for another episode, but from there on out, everything for Agent Zero was basically downhill. He was already suffering under the weight of all the injuries that his body had accumulated over his NBA career, but this was just too much. The thing is, Having teams lose their trust in you as a player is one thing, but having them lose trust in you as a man, that's a whole other story. And he tried to revive his career in Orlando as a backup point guard, but he was just so underperforming and such a dead weight for his team that the Magic had to resort to using one of the most unheard of rules in the history of the NBA, the amnesty clause. And that allowed them to waive him to save a roster spot. Not that Gilbert cared, since he was still getting his money anyway, but that was basically it. The only thing left was a quick one-year trip to go play in China, and that was the end of Gilbert Arenas' basketball journey. This is a story of a man that flew too close to the sun. The same disregard for limits that helped him go above and beyond the projections that everyone had for him as a second rounder ultimately caused his downfall. A guy that just didn't know when to stop. I mean, he's still proving it to this day with all his unpopular opinions that he keeps spouting off every time he goes on a podcast. Gil was a true model of what an NBA player should not do when you become successful. John Morant. So, all you young guys out there, just pay attention to this man's career. I mean, he had reached the pinnacle of the NBA before losing it all. If he just had a little bit more maturity, what more could he have achieved? We're talking about a guy that had 3 All-NBA selections at just 25 years old. How many more could he have gotten? As always, I'd love to hear your opinions on this down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.